Alright, so let's analyze the second game. Caitlyn and Silas ban. Fair enough. Katarina ban, that's completely random. If you can't play against Katarina in competitive, then you're doing something wrong. Okay, so they're trolling their bans. Diana. I don't care if you have 2,000 games in Diana, right? It's like... The way... No, yeah, that's it. I'm not even... No, I'm not gonna justify myself. That's just... That is absurd. Okay, maybe the mid laner... No. 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 No, I'm not... This is not... No, that's not something to consider. I would personally recommend... Okay. So you draft your late game win condition first. The thing about late game win conditions is that they define your composition. Early game champions are usually less committal in terms of what they can do. Think about any good early game champion. Like, think about Lee Sin. Think about Karma. Think about Rise even. Right? Think about these champions that have multiple purposes. Like, you can put Rise in the side lane. You can put Rise and Siege. Like, mainly you want to put him on side lane, right? So you don't need to make him part of the main group. Now, Vladimir more or less defines your comp as, like, kite / disengage / extend it, run it down, run the enemy team down. You leave open the... You ban the Hecarim, which I find understandable, but you still have, for example, Ezreal Yumi open. So that means you're prepared to play against it again. Well, you guys played against it very well, so it might be results based. Like, okay, well that's theoretically unsound, but we perform well against it. That is completely fine. Okay, pick up an early Mordekaiser. Jinx Lulu. I like where this is going. So far, the composition is consistent. Let's see if we find ourselves an early game jungler. In this kind of comp, I would rather pick up a Jarvan, for example, than a Sejuani. Because you lack that early game threat if you go Sejuani. If you do want to shadow mid lane, for example, and tail it, how much more of an oomph does a Jarvan give than a Sejuani, right? You just get there from a longer range, do more damage, knock him up instantly. It's a lot harder to respond against. So I would not be banning out that Sejuani. I would be banning out the... Let's say if they want the Sejuani, that would be fine, right? That would be great. They can try and draft a Rise or whatever with that. So they could be running that. I would be considering to ban that. They might ban Olaf, which shows or forces out the Sejuani ban on your side. So, the Veigar ban, the target ban. Again, I don't like those double late game scaling comps. Like, I don't think that works. I don't think that's what we want to draft for. Like, pray to God that you can make it to 30 minutes unscathed, right? The best way to force a draw is to win early on, right? That's kind of like a famous quote in chess. If you need that draw for a tournament, why not try and get yourself ahead in the early stages, right? If you have ways to take the initiative, that your chances are only going to go up from there to try and make it to that late game. Alrighty, Aatrox Aatrox Jarvan. Let's do it. Aatrox Lee Sin, also a fine choice, especially if you lack that Art Engage. Yeah, that works just fine. I think that's very sound. Kayn, yeah. Nocturne, no, don't go for Nocturne. No Evelyn. Yeah, Lee Sin, alright. Lee Sin made sense. Kayn, I think, was a worse choice, but would make some amount of sense. And yeah, the other ones are just, haha. Nice meme. Alright, well. While we wait for Boss Giovanni to pick, let's just draft an early game plan. See how you guys feel about my early game plan. I don't know how you guys determine if Skiz is in charge of that, or if one of the assistant coaches is doing that for this team, or if the players do it themselves. There's so many options. I haven't really been inquiring a lot about it. Something that I'll just do it and give you my take on it. So, first of all, let's just say what I would want to have happen, right? Let's say one common route here would be for the Lee Sin to try and control the Nocturne. So, Nocturne can either go this, this, and this, or he could go for blue into topside, right? Those are really his only two reasonable options. The other one would be blue into full clear, and then he moves in here, right? Those are three routes. What you can go for is Lee Sin wants to have an early ward, so he doesn't want to get oracles early on. I might have a power outage here soon. Not sure what would cause that. Anyway, what that does mean is that Lee Sin can try and counter Nocturne's routes by just evading his topside Raptors. So what Lee Sin can do is go red buff, Raptors, enemy Raptors. If those are down, then you can look for him on his Krugs, right? That's a very, very, very aggressive route that presumes mid lane priority through Aatrox. And if you want to do a more standard setup, you can just start with with Krugs and Raptors, and then pivot around on the map based on the vision you got from, let's say, a mid laner warding Raptors and a support warding Pixel Brush, and then going base for Oracles. That's a very common setup in pro play. That's something I would recommend. And then your focus is going to be around, I would say, even in this case, I would even dare to say the top side, because Nocturne can't really gank that proactively yet. Ganking that two-player lane with an Ezreal Nami to set it up is very, very difficult. So I would presume that Nocturne's going to try and focus on doing a little bit of a control around topside, which is hard, right? Let's say if they get vision on the Pixel Brushes, right? What they can try and do is that if Lee Sin moves top, Nocturne goes bot and just takes the weak side of the map. That's what I would say is going to happen. Lee Sin's going to play around the solo laners, going to play around the Mordekaiser, going to play around the Kiana. And these guys are just occasionally on the backs on, let's say you're on Krugs and you just look at it. But it's not the focus, right? You're not going to go Krugs into, let's just sit in this river for half a minute. That's not really the plan. Alright. That's my game plan in short. Then you go to mid game. Mid game, you got this guy, right? Mid game, these two fellers are top of the line, top drawer stuff. Mid game is going to be all about the Nocturne ultimates. That's your main sort of focus in mid game. So you can try and draft around little tactics like going for deep vision, getting deep wards on the slow pushes. If Jinx and Lulu complete a slow push, you can try and get the take out the, what is it called, the bomb plant as I call it, with the Jinx rocket. Get the Scrying plant, get a ward over the wall. You can also get a ward on the wolves if you want to go even deeper. Not usually needed. I wouldn't recommend it, but at least as long as you get a deep ward there somewhere, you guys can figure it out. Ideally, I think Lee Sin wants to have a pink ward. Someone needs to place a pink ward behind Nocturne's red buff and really try and dominate. Essentially, you want to have your line of control like this. You want to have full dominance over that top side. You want to have dominance over mid lane, and then try and make sure you don't lose control too much over bot lane just because you're not focusing it and don't want to lose control over your own jungle, right? This is kind of our setup early game, right, in terms of control. And what they want to have happen is, let's say they just get complete control over bot lane and they get access to your jungle that way. and it becomes... Alright, part 2 of the second game. So they want to make it more 50-50. See if they can get it set up on, let's say, your Krugs. Honestly, Nocturne should struggle. Nocturne should struggle a lot, right, to get levels. So I really hope to see a very proactive early game. Clearly, the blue side in this case has priority, or early game has priority in the jungle, has priority in mid lane. I call it priority in the jungle because it kind of means having the first move, right? So Lee Sin makes his move, and then Nocturne is kind of forced to respond. That's what I mean with priority in the jungle. And I'm not sure if that term is used that way very frequently, but that's how I use it. Pretty clear, right? And if you look at the enemy team, yeah, Nocturne will have to try and, for example, if he starts topside, and, for example, goes for the most defensive route he can do is a 4-camp route. Is a 4-camp route like this. And even more safe so, if you look at Challenger Hackrams, a lot of the Korean Challenger Hackrams will show you the most defensive route early on. And the most defensive route also gives you a decent opportunity to grab some initiative. It's just lower economy, that's why it's defensive. Because you're not getting as many resources. So you're managing your risk that way, instead of just fully committing to getting that level 6 as early as you can. So that would be red, Raptors, and then what you can do is start controlling. Like for example, if you don't have any control over river, then you go ward somewhere. Maybe even you can walk up to the Raptors and ward, and then you go blue, grump, blah blah blah, and let's say you go Krugs, Raptors base, right? That would be an example early game, and then you go back onto the map, and then you can go for control again, right? You can tail a lane for a second, you can walk into the bot lane, and then go directly for a setup there, or whatever is happening at that point. But you already cleared your Krugs and Raptors. You can even clear your Krugs depending on the pace of all this, right? If you don't have to go into river first, what a lot of pro Hackram players will do is they will just go to the Krugs afterwards, and it is an inefficient path like this, but obviously the payoff is that you take your most valuable camp, which does absolutely nothing for you but give you resources, when you got nothing else to do anymore anyway. So you're not like, oh, something's happening in bot lane. Well, if only I wasn't on my Krugs right now. Right? Kind of prevent that scenario. Alright. I'm just gonna sit here in silence. Just a very tense, intense moment in the game. See what happens. Very intense. I'm scared shitless. Can you feel the tension here? Oh boy, oh boy. Alright, so that's a good moment for Lee Sin to start. Topside, I love it. I love this kind of... That is the initiative. I would have expected them to do a standard fan out and try and prevent those little invades. I wouldn't have recommended for blue team to respond to this. What is happening? Why would Mordekaiser walk through that way? Just walk directly through lane, buddy. What is up? What is up? Well, I don't get why they don't just go for standard fan out. Just get ward and pixel, get a ward over there, get oracles on the support and Nocturne, potentially swap it back out on the next back and get 2 more wards way earlier than you would have if he stuck with the yellow ward. They're not doing any of that. Alright, well, so Lee Sin with a very clear head start. Nocturne should be heading for those Krugs, so Lee Sin now has to make a pivotal decision to either... Oh, Nocturne goes for his wolves, he's conceding in the map here. Which means that Lee Sin can cross diagonally and leave. If he has a ward, no he doesn't. Aatrox would need to ward the topside pixel brush. Right now, it would be assumed that Nocturne's going bot side, right? So essentially you want to ward the bottom side pixel brush right now. If you only have 1 ward available, that's where you put it. And you can try and catch Nocturne on this rotation that he commits to way too late. This is it. This is it. This is what you want to catch out. If you're thinking about I'm talking about this before it happens. I'm talking about this live. This is why I like talking about it live, because I can try and predict what people do and not say, like, yeah, that's because I looked at it 5 times. Like, I'm calling this out in the moment, right? In the moment, it appears like Nocturne will have to go to bot side, right? And you want to ward that out and see what he does. And I don't think the red ward was very good. If you had a red ward on Raptors, then you can spot his horizontal or vertical movement. Which in this case, you just can't because you don't have the resources. You don't have the amount of wards. At least it still has the option to go to those Krugs and get the respawn timer on it and control the solo lanes. Nocturne would still have to go to Lee Sin's Krugs because he can't afford to gank mid lane right now. That would be near suicidal. Oh boy. Yeah, that's it. Very interesting setup here. Because both teams should know where the junglers are, right? On which side of the map. That is very unfortunate. Obviously, I'm not in direct communication with the players, but that looks to me like if you are aware, let's say if you were aware that Nocturne was in Krugs, which he wasn't, but let's say you assume he's coming back from Krugs, then you would be very, very hesitant to make that move, right? And what you can do is essentially get vision the closest you can to that incoming Nocturne so that you can respond the quickest you can towards your turret. So you're going to hug the side that he's coming from, while sometimes you want to hug the side he's not coming from, right? So it depends on the setup there that you have. Lee Sin didn't touch the top side. He should know that at 440, 430, that's around the time where those Nocturne Raptors respawn. So you can get in there, get a ward there. If he's there, you can try and skirmish a little bit with the Aatrox, try and win 2v2, get control of the Raptors, go to the Krugs from there. If you're afraid of Mordekaiser, which you shouldn't be, but if you are, then, you know, maybe you can skip out on the Krugs. But yeah, that should be the main idea here of this early game, right? Full commitment to controlling that side. I don't think the bot lane is not your, like, even if this works, I still think it's fundamentally a flawed concept. This is in my opinion where the game plan is pivoted around. This is where you, if this is, let's say if I make a game plan before the game, I give it to my team and this is how they play, this is where I say, like, okay, this is where you fail to execute the game plan that I set up for you. Like, no matter how you try and execute it, this just doesn't fit in with that idea of, like, example tactics being the Raptor 430, 440 invade that I mentioned, right? That would be such a staple tactic that works so often. Just a little bit of preparation to get you that head start. And here you have that set up and you don't go for it, you just go to bot lane. Which is directly opposite to what you want to do to establish control over. You do have, like, you can play around your bot lane and get early Drakes. That is a possibility. But if you did want to do that, then you shouldn't have played the way you did. Then you should be shooting into your bot side immediately and start controlling it. In that case, it would make no sense to start top side, right? In their jungle, that is. So it would be a very strange setup in that case. You could just start out, let's say, for example, on your blue buff. Go blue wolves, red buff, right? And then see if you can get your level 3 or if you have to do something level 2. You can go to Raptors, see if you can get mid lane, and otherwise you're gonna go towards either Krugs or bot lane. You got those setups, right? Then you're controlling bot side from the way you're routing, right? Okay, so part 3, I think, right, of the second game. We're just doing some play-by-play, we're doing some analysis. I'm not going into too much micro, like, oh, Aatrox flashes a little bit too early here. If you do that a little bit later when your auto attack is already ready, then you're going to surprise your opponent way more, and it's going to be much harder for him to flash you. If you look at Faker, he's a god at predicting those kind of flashes or reacting to it within 200 ms, which I don't understand. For me, that's biologically impossible. That's not something training related. It's biologically not possible for me to react that fast. Faster than 200 milliseconds. But you see here, like, you're giving your opponent way more than that, right? You're not playing against Faker here. You're playing against someone who took, like, well over a quarter second to respond. So just flash auto. That's going to be real hard. I do that a lot. I have clips of... An example of that would be me as a gutter trash elo player. That's not the point. Doing that with Darius, right? Just getting those stacks, waiting it out, and then flash W. Right? Just trying to make it harder. Like, expand that time window where you have that threat. Right? Those are some general concepts that aren't very common in League. But they play out in that situation. Like, they're relevant in that situation. Alright, Mordekaiser's getting a taste of his own medicine? Does that make any sense? No, that doesn't make any sense at all. Alright, well, let's keep going. Lee Sin's on his blue buff. He doesn't have to donate it, so he's just gonna take it. Lee Sin, again. Raptors, Krugs, Raptors of the enemy. Show initiative, abuse the initiative, constantly sit in there, constantly push up against the map the furthest you can. The highest priority targets on the map, right? Try and go for that as much as you can. There's no reason to sit in your jungle like this against a champion that had nothing to do in the first 5 to 6 levels. That is, yeah, big issue. You're not out farming him, and you certainly, you know, have more presence early, and you're going to, you know, you guys are getting set up for the third kill being on the red team. You know it's gonna come from somewhere, right? Floop, swoosh, boop, skip, skadoop, skedaddle, skadoodle, and that's it. Like, you know it. You know it's coming, right? I know it's coming. I'm calling it, right? Because in that situation, just from the percentages themselves, like if you calculate it in terms of, let's say, if some analyst showed you the exact percentages of what happens when you're just completely dead even against a level 7 Nocturne with a completed jungle item, it's like it's going to the kill is always going to be falling on that red team somewhere. No matter how good you are as a team, it's gonna happen. Obviously, you want to abuse that initiative as hard as you can. So here would be a situation in which you reevaluate the game and say, okay, well, our early game plan failed tremendously. So now we can only hope to expand existing leads and avoid leads that have gotten out of control, right? Hope for little mishaps on the enemy team. We don't have the initiative anymore. We're now going to play for control. We're now going to play for avoidance, for risk management, baiting out errors, right? This is going to be an uphill struggle from here. Let's hope that the Vladimir skills, stuff like that. Matters of that kind. Okay. See a recurring pattern here. It's almost as if there's one lane that's very easy for the Nocturne to just pop his ultimate on, especially if it doesn't have summoners, which means that you, as a jungler, you can time, like, you can I'm currently experimenting with certain communicational roles. I won't talk about that right now. I'll just await the results of the experiment. But if that goes through, essentially you want to have someone who's calling out the ult cooldown, roughly, right? Even if you don't know it exactly, it's like, what is it, 100 seconds? Whatever, right? 100 seconds. Alright, 100 seconds. Let's go with 100 seconds. Let's go with 90 if you're doubtful, right? 1.5 minute, time it, and then you know, okay, after those 90 seconds, there's a sort of high value of using that ability when it's up, right? You don't want to wait 5 minutes with that ultimate. So in the next minute after he gets it, it's very likely that they're going to be looking for a play. That's when you can play for the counter to the initiative, right? That's when you can play the counter to the initiative instead of just avoidance, right? Because you have something that they don't, which is preparation and knowledge and like being one step ahead of them where they least expect it. So that's when you can shadow that mid lane. When you can deep ward that jungle at some point. Just walk in there, deep ward it, try and spot them out, and predict which lane is going. Which is very likely going to be mid lane when it doesn't have any summoners. And it's just a one man. It's just a lot easier than Azrael Nami setup in bot lane, right? Like Azrael Nami facilitating the gank on two champions that are quite good at controlling and disengaging, right? Jinx being mediocre, but let's be honest, it's Jinx Lulu. Here we have it. See, this is like, okay, well, Lee Sin has the initiative in bot lane. He's gonna go in there and take everything that's up. They're gonna set up a dive, which, what? Wait, what? Oh, I'm completely tripping. It's actually Lee Sin taking his own jungle. Sorry, I'm completely, blah, 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 blah. I take that back. I was hoping that Nocturne would invade Lee Sin's red buff. But they still, somehow, I mean, you'd expect after Kiana going 4-1 that they have mid lane priority. But they don't, so never mind that. Okay. Very, very nice. Creative setup. Something that I wouldn't be able to plan before the game. Just abusing the fact that you have some priorities there. And making a really proactive play here. You guys better make it count. Oh! The casters must be going crazy! I have a bar in front of my volume meter, but otherwise I would be sure to verify that the casters are going crazy. Anyway, this is taking the initiative. This is really showing these guys what you're made of. This is where the Mordekaiser ends his flash because he's like, oh, they're going in, I need to do something here. See, they're feeling pressured. You know, we're people. We have emotions. If you do this to an enemy team, they're instantly gonna feel pressured, and suddenly they start making mistakes. You're like, holy shit, these guys look like a bunch of gold players, right? It's a consequence of how you make them feel, right? Make them feel like they're being pressured every step of the way. All right. Anyway, they should and will be taking that dragon. When will the Mordekaiser ever learn that he will not be winning these 1v1s anymore? Whether he Shadow Realms or not? Oh, that's not good. Vladimir can't chase him, right? Because Mordekaiser has control and it's gonna get his cooldowns, but Mordekaiser can't win the 1v1 just by saying, I'm going to Shadow Realm you. So it's a waste of time. Both players a little bit too proactive in that sense. If you look at the current game state, ask yourself, what is VSP's way, or VSP Academy's way of winning this game? Are there any reasonable win conditions on the table right now? I'm gonna meet you guys in part 4 for a close-up. Alright, last part. The game state at this point is in such a way, I'm gonna answer the question I posed just 2 seconds ago. The game state is in such a way that you lost, right? That it's done so. The only way you would win is through silly mistakes. The only way you would win is if, let's say, Nocturne dives and dies for no reason. He could have just played it safer. And let's say Mordekaiser gets run down by the scaling Vladimir. And for example, Ezreal, Nami are easy to catch out, let's say by Lee Sin. Right? All these things revolve around either picking people off or overcommitment or greed by the enemies, right? So once you know those win conditions, you can look for strategies or tactics to try and implement them. For example, in this case, you're just trying to pick people off. Why are they there? Why are they there? I don't know. But you're looking at that, you know, you're already prepared for that, right? You're already prepared for what happens when certain people start splitting off. Let's say Mordekaiser an easy catch. Why aren't they grouping up with more players at once and just try and mitigate their risks, right? The risk against these kind of picks. That is a really big question for me that I don't have an easy answer to. I think it's because you essentially throw away a tiny portion of resources, right? You do waste a little bit of money, a little bit of gold, but in return you're going to safely compound your lead from the fact that you have, let's say, 3/4 map control, that you can barge into any area of the map where buffs are spawning and take them. So for example, this red buff would be Nocturnes if they played for, let's say, 5-man mid and just went to that buff. They can just get that. Just say, we want that, we will have it, right? So that's what you get in return for playing lower economy and managing your risk, right? Now again, we see a scenario in which they are, in this case, adapting to that a little bit and setting up a 3-man against at least. And they still don't have great vision, which is one of the greatest sources of risk management in the entire video game. A sad moment in the history of VSP management. Alright. So, yeah, I think in this one, for me, #1 issue, let's talk about that. Oh, slam dunked my elbow into the table. That does hurt a little bit, but nothing too bad. So let's talk about that, right? Stop. Pause. No bueno. Please. Okay. So, this time I think our comp is a little bit more well balanced, right? You had, as I analyzed at the start, you got early game condition, you got mid game, you got late game, you got another, like, something that kind of sieges and gets some priority early on, but is a little bit more oriented at late game, right? So this is like your flying saucer. It's all over the place, right? That's just how bot lanes are at the moment as well. So, let's see. You got your jungle setup. And Lee Sin naturally, I mean, obviously, you naturally would like to get the AoE camps, right? AoE from Nocturne. You would like to get the solo lanes, right? Because you're not that good at running people down for extended periods of time. Essentially, you're just... how do I express this properly? 3v2 is not as big a deal as a 2v1. That's one of the easiest ways to put it. And usually that which is in the bot lane will complement one another, so it's like 2.5 champions. You could say bot lane is 2.5 versus 2.5, because you get that opportunity to synergize two champions with one another. A champion in top lane has to be full package that can just battle in different ways, right? While in bot lane you can do the little, what is it called, like the Dragon Ball Z, like, combine forces and become 10 times stronger, or whatever you want to call it, right? So if one person has pure DPS, the other one can be disengaged and compensate for the squishiness. They can compensate for each other's weaknesses and become, like, 2.5 out of 5, or 2.5 out of 5.5. Whatever it is, right? Same in mid lane. You can, again, draft 2.5. You could essentially draft a total of six champions this way. This is, yes, high quality analysis right here. But you get my point, right? The point itself is serious. The point is, bot lane, it's like 3.5 against 2.5. And then if you have disengage or control here, then your setup sucks as well. While, let's say if a Vladimir has a shitty setup, well, at least you still get the 1v1 this guy, right? And this guy is probably not going to have that super heavy disengage, etc, etc, etc. You get the point at this point. It's just reiterating it over and over again at this point. So, that means you want to grab the initiative in top side and control the strong side of the map. I don't understand why we don't play around that. I don't understand this 4:30 timer on Nocturne, for example. Especially if Lee Sin's the one taking those raptors, you have it down to the microsecond. There should be no way that you're not there at that respawn time. That would be an absolutely crucial aspect of the entire game plan, in my opinion. And if top lane loses really hard and mid lane is struggling, yeah, you can play around bot lane. That's an adaptive plan. That's a plan B, right? So you got plan A and plan B. Plan A did not fail. Plan A did not fail. It just wasn't being chosen for it. So you kind of went with plan B to begin with, and it's already like trying to scrape by. You didn't really get those early drakes anyway, so didn't really commit to that plan either. So it's always like, first of all, you want to make a plan A and plan B, commit to plan A, and make sure that you commit to one of these two plans in the first place. So it's like, it's about drafting one or two plans, then making sure your team commits to a plan, and then preferably that being plan A, right? It's kind of a childish way of putting it, very condescending almost. But yeah, I like putting it into simple terms. I hope you all don't mind that. That's it for this one. Get in there and get everyone in the same page. What is Jinx and Lulu's purpose? Let's distribute it in roles. What is Vladimir's role? Right? He has two things. First of all, he has a late game win condition, and he has a compositional synergy, right? So his role is to add to the composition and to essentially carry the late game, right? Those are his two roles. If you look at his role, if you look at Lee Sin's role is to distribute the plays on the team, right? Distribute the focus, distribute the resources, distribute ganks or control, right? You could say in general, distribute his presence, right? However that is used. His role is going to be to add to the composition a little bit, not too much though. He's not really a heavy, I need this champion for my comp to work champion. Not really, right? So his goal is going to be to achieve our early game win condition. And as long as he is as priority over the enemy jungler, he's gonna try and prevent the enemy win con, right? So that's not really Nocturne's goal, for example. Nocturne's goal is not to cross Lee Sin's win condition. It's going to be to avoid it altogether, right? And just go to the other side of the map. So prevent it by, for example, farming out those AoE camps, right? And once you start bringing that together, you know that for example, Jinx and Lulu are there to try and soak up those ganks, right? They're gonna try and farm up. They add to this late game with Vladimir. They don't really factor into the early game plan. They just need to survive. Focus on getting every single CS. Focusing on survival. On trying not to give Nocturne those free ultimates on him by deep warding, vision control, those kind of things. That's your role in the early game on the team, right? So everyone knows their roles, and then the game plan follows from that. or the other way around. Everyone needs to be on the same page, right? And be like, this is what I get to do. I feel like that wasn't really the case. I hope that's something we can work on. That's been it for this one. I hope